I always thought silence was a blessing, until the day it started telling me truths I didn't want to hear. You know that moment when everything crumbles, but you keep standing there, smiling, pretending everything is fine? That cold winter night in Seoul was like that for me. The windows of my apartment in Mapodong trembled with the cutting wind, and steam still rose from the rice bowl on the table. I had just returned from Busan. 3 days of endless meetings, forced smiles, empty conversations that echoed the void I already felt inside. All I wanted was that simple, ordinary, predictable moment. Dinner with my 7-year-old son, and the man I still called my husband, even though, deep down, I already knew he had stopped being mine a long time ago. Before I continue, I need to ask you something, and this comes from the heart. It's not just an automatic request. If you've ever felt this pain, if you've ever pretended not to see something that was screaming in your face, if you've ever smiled when you wanted to fall apart, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. I need more people to know they're not alone on this journey, that we can rebuild ourselves, even when it seems impossible, okay? So come with me, because this story is about pain, but it's also about rebirth. He was there, sitting at the table as always, with that overly relaxed posture, almost careless. Between one spoonful and another, his fingers glided across the phone screen with a familiarity that deeply irritated me. I had already gotten used to his absence. A present absence, you know? That kind of person who is physically by your side, but who actually inhabits another world, another emotional universe that you don't have access to. The apartment smelled of traditional Korean spices, garlic, sesame, red pepper paste. I had prepared everything carefully, following the recipes I learned from my mother, the ones that carry memories and affection in each ingredient. The yellowish kitchen light created a warm atmosphere, almost cozy, but there was something cold in the air, something I couldn't name yet, and it was in that interval of his distraction, in that seemingly ordinary moment, that my son leaned toward me. His brown eyes shone with that innocent curiosity of children, that transparency that hasn't yet learned to hide secrets. His voice came out softly, almost a whisper, but each word echoed inside me like thunder. Mom, the auntie sleeps in Daddy's bed when you travel. The world didn't stop. My heart didn't explode. There was no dramatic background music. It was much simpler and more devastating than that. It was just a silence that occupied all the space, as if the oxygen had been sucked from the room. I felt my breath get trapped in my chest, trapped between my ribs, wanting to escape but finding no way out. I looked at my husband. He continued fiddling with his phone, as if he hadn't heard anything. Maybe he really hadn't. Or maybe he was just exercising that male ability to pretend certain things don't exist if you ignore them long enough. For an instant, time seemed to curve inside me, fold over itself, creating a distortion where past and present mixed. I saw flashes of memories, our wedding, the promises, the smiles, the photographs that seemed so real. All of this danced before me like flickering shadows, but I smiled. I just smiled. I stroked my son's hair and said something like, "Oh, how funny," with a lightness I didn't feel. And I pretended not to hear, pretended not to understand, pretended those words hadn't just torn something inside me. That night, after I put my son to bed, after reading his favorite story, making funny voices for the characters, kissing his warm forehead and smelling the children's soap that always calmed me, after the apartment finally fell silent, and my husband collapsed on the bed with the tiredness of someone who worked all day, or the weight of accumulated lies, I sat on the cold kitchen floor. I had a cup of tea in my hands. Ginger tea, which my grandmother always said warmed the soul. But the tea had completely cooled, and my hands trembled so much that the cup clinked against the saucer. The sound of the wall clock echoed absurdly loud. Tick-tock, tick-tock, marking each second of this new reality I still didn't have the courage to name. The kitchen was dark, illuminated only by the weak light coming from the hallway. I could see my distorted reflection in the oven door, a woman sitting on the floor, knees bent, hugging a cup as if it could somehow save me. Did I look pathetic? Do all betrayed women end up like this, sitting on their kitchen floors in the middle of the night, trying to understand where everything fell apart? And it was there, on that frozen floor that froze my skin through my clothes, that something inside me broke. But it wasn't a dramatic break. It wasn't a noisy collapse. It was silent, almost elegant in its pain, like a thin crack that runs through a crystal glass. You only notice when you hold the object in the right light. I didn't cry. Not at that moment. The tears stayed trapped somewhere between my throat and my eyes, refusing to fall. Maybe because crying would be admitting that this was happening. Maybe because, in Korea, we learn from a very young age to swallow pain, to maintain composure, to not make a scene. But I knew what I needed to do. I grabbed my phone. The screen illuminated my face in the darkness, and I started searching. Discreet cameras, recording systems, ways to see the truth without anyone knowing I was looking. Little did I know that decision, that solitary choice made on the cold floor of my kitchen, would change absolutely everything. In the following days, I transformed into an actress, an award-winning actress, the kind that deserves trophies for the ability to pretend everything is normal when the whole world is crumbling inside. I woke up early, prepared breakfast with the same dedication as always. Scrambled eggs, fresh kimchi, perfectly cooked white rice. The smell of filtered coffee filled the kitchen, and I hummed softly while cooking, as if my heart wasn't breaking in slow motion. I kissed my husband at the door before he left for work. A quick, casual kiss, the kind couples give after years together without thinking much about the meaning. But each touch of my mouth on his was a study. I observed his reaction, looking for signs of guilt, discomfort, anything that would confirm what I already knew, but hadn't yet seen. I prepared his favorite dinner, bulgogi with mushrooms, the one he always praised, the one he said was better than his own mother's. I set the table with the nice plates, the ones we only used on special occasions. I even lit a candle. He was surprised, commented that I had been affectionate lately. I smiled and said I was just trying to value our family more. I laughed at the same old jokes, those unfunny jokes he repeated for years, which I already knew the ending before he even finished telling them. But I laughed heartily, as if they were the funniest thing in the world. But each gesture, each look, each word was calculated. I observed him like someone analyzing a stranger who learned to wear the face of someone you loved. I studied his patterns, his poorly told lies, the times he checked his phone too quickly, the way he always seemed to have night meetings when I announced a trip. How had I not noticed before? All the evidence had always been there, dancing in front of me like blinking neon, but I had chosen not to see, because seeing would mean acting, and acting would mean destroying the illusion of a perfect family that I had built so carefully. It was on a Thursday afternoon that I installed the first camera. He had left early for a supposed business lunch. My son was at school. I was alone in the apartment that suddenly seemed too big and too small at the same time. My hands trembled as I took the small device out of the box. It was so tiny, almost the size of a coin. Modern technology is scary like that. An entire betrayal can fit inside something that fits in the palm of your hand. I installed one in the bedroom lamp. I hid it between the shade fabric and the bulb, at an angle that would capture the entire bed. I tested it several times on the phone app, adjusting until I was sure the image was clear. I placed another in the living room, hidden among the books on the shelf, those books we bought when we moved, saying we would read together on winter nights. How many of them did we actually read? How many promises remained just decoration on the shelf? It wasn't revenge. I repeated this to myself like a mantra. It wasn't revenge. It was survival. It was protection. It was the need to see with my own eyes before destroying everything, before destroying my son's family, before admitting that the last years had been a lie, before accepting that the man I loved had become a stranger who just wore his face. In Korea, we learn from an early age to swallow our pride, to smile even with a cracking throat, to keep up appearances because society values harmony above all. Divorce is still seen with judgmental looks, whispers at parent meetings, veiled comments about that woman who didn't know how to hold her marriage together. But there's a limit to any silence, and mine had already become a contained scream that echoed inside my chest every night. I finished installing the cameras and cleaned up any trace. I stored the boxes, threw away the receipts, deleted the browsing history. No one could know. No one could suspect. When my husband came home that night, with the smell of perfume that wasn't mine, and a rehearsed excuse about traffic, I kissed him on the cheek and asked how his day had been. Normal, he said. Just another normal day. And I smiled, serving dinner, thinking about how the word normal had completely lost its meaning. 3 days later, I would need to travel again. Busan. More meetings, more fake smiles, and this time, I would know exactly what would happen in my absence. But nothing prepared me for what I was about to discover. The bullet train to Busan cut through the landscape with surreal speed. Snow-covered fields passed like white blurs through the window. I was sitting in a window seat, my bag on my lap. nervous fingers drumming on the fabric. The reflection in the glass showed a face I barely recognized. It was mine. Same eyes, same face shape, same mouth, but there was something different in the expression. A coldness, a determination, a kind of strength that emerges when you've already lost so much that you have nothing left to fear. Other passengers around me slept, worked on laptops, talked on the phone. Normal life, normal routines, normal problems, and there I was, carrying a secret that weighed like a stone in my stomach. I arrived in Busan in the late afternoon. The hotel was one of those corporate ones, impersonal, with the smell of cleaning products and freshly vacuumed carpet. The room had a king-size bed too big for one person, heavy curtains that blocked the city light, and a silence that amplified each beat of my heart. I threw my suitcase in a corner. I didn't even bother unpacking. I sat on the edge of the bed, the impeccable white comforter, and grabbed my phone with hands that trembled so much I almost dropped the device. I opened the camera app. The icon blinked in the corner. 2 devices online. I took a deep breath. Once. Twice. 3 times. "Are you sure you want to do this?" a voice inside me asked. "Are you sure you want to see? Because once you see, there's no going back. There's no way to undo knowledge." But I had already come too far to turn back. I touched the bedroom camera icon. The image loaded slowly. Hotel internet is never as good as they promise. The screen went black for a few eternal seconds, then pixelated, and finally clear. The room was empty. Our bed, the bed where we slept side by side for years, where we conceived our son, where we exchanged confidences on sleepless nights, was impeccably made. For a second, idiotic relief washed over me. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's just paranoia. Maybe... And then I heard the sound of the door opening. First came the laughter. Light, complicit laughter. The kind that people who share a secret exchange. My stomach turned. She entered the frame first. The auntie, the woman I had hired to help with my son, to clean the house, to make my life easier while I worked. She was in her early 20s, long straight hair, beautiful smile. I trusted her. God, how I trusted her. And she was wearing my bathrobe. That blue silk bathrobe my husband had given me on our first wedding anniversary. The one I kept carefully, that I only wore on special occasions because I didn't want it to wear out. She spun in front of the mirror, laughing, posing. And then she said something I couldn't quite hear, but which made her laugh even more. And right after, he entered. My husband, my son's father, the man with whom I exchanged vows, with whom I built a life, with whom I planned a future. He pulled her by the waist. She threw her head back, laughing. And then they kissed. It wasn't a quick, casual kiss. It was a kiss from people who have time, who are comfortable, who have done this many times before. I should have disconnected at that moment. Should have thrown the phone away, run out of the hotel room, done anything other than continue watching. But I couldn't. I watched while they fell on the bed. I watched while he removed the bathrobe from her. My bathrobe. I watched while they touched each other with an intimacy that hurts more than any slap. The audio was on. I could hear everything. Every whispered word. Every moan. Every complicit laugh. At one point she said, "What if she finds out?" And he replied, with a casualness that froze me to the bone, "She won't. She's too good. Trusts too much. She sees what she wants to see." He was right. I had seen only what I wanted to see. I had ignored all the signs, all the red flags, all the evidence screaming the truth in my face. The video continued. I don't know how long it lasted. It could be minutes or hours. Time had lost meaning. I was floating somewhere outside my body, observing my own destruction from a safe distance. When it ended, the silence was so profound that even the sound of my heart seemed to apologize for continuing to beat. And you know what was worse? It wasn't the betrayal itself. It was realizing I had been the last to know, that all those days I pretended normalcy, he was also pretending. That while I prepared special dinners and tried to save our marriage, he was counting the minutes until my next trip. But that night in the hotel in Busan was just the beginning. I couldn't sleep that night. I lay in the hotel bed, staring at the white ceiling, feeling my whole body tremble with a mixture of rage, pain, and strangely, relief. Relief because I finally had the truth. Relief because I wasn't crazy, wasn't paranoid, wasn't seeing things, as he always insinuated when I questioned his obvious lies, but mainly rage. A rage that started deep in my stomach and rose like fire through my throat. Rage at him, of course, but also rage at myself, for being so naive, for believing, for wasting years of my life building a house of cards that any wind would knock down. At 5 a.m, I gave up trying to sleep. I took a hot shower that didn't warm me. I put on some random clothes. I canceled all the day's meetings with vague excuses about a family emergency. I took the first train back to Seoul. During the entire journey, I mentally rehearsed the confrontation. I thought of things I would say, sharp words that would cut him as much as he had cut me. I imagined throwing the phone in his face, showing the video, screaming all the questions that suffocated me. But when I finally got home, when I opened the apartment door and heard the sound of the TV on and my son laughing at some cartoon, all that rehearsed rage transformed into something different. Calm. An icy, calculated, almost frightening calm. "You're back early," my husband said, getting up from the armchair with an expression of genuine surprise. Surprise, as if he had every right to be surprised, as if I was the one doing something wrong. "They canceled the meetings," I lied with an ease that even scared me. "They decided to reschedule for next week." "Oh," he scratched his head, clearly uncomfortable. "Are you okay? You look tired." Tired. What an interesting word. Did he know the real weight of it? Did he understand the kind of tiredness that comes from carrying a lie, from pretending you don't know, from smiling when what you want is to scream? "I'm great," I replied, forcing a smile. "Where's the auntie?" He choked minimally. I only noticed because I was paying attention. "Oh, I gave her the day off. I thought she deserved it, you know? She works so hard. How kind of you." Each word came out of my mouth covered in poison disguised as honey. "You've always been so considerate with employees." I went to my son's room. He was sitting in front of the TV, completely absorbed in the cartoons, innocent smile illuminating his little face. My heart broke again. What world had I created for him? What example of love and respect? I hugged him from behind, buried my face in his hair, breathed in the child smell that always calmed me. "I love you, my love," I whispered. "I love you too, Mommy," he replied distractedly, without taking his eyes off the screen. I went back to the living room. My husband had gone back to fiddling with his phone, probably messages from her, probably arranging the next meeting, the next stolen moment, the next betrayal. I prepared dinner as always. I set the table, I lit a candle, I served the wine. We ate in silence, just the sound of silverware against plates, and the noise of the TV in the background. It was almost peaceful, almost normal. If you didn't know what I knew, it would seem like just another dinner for an ordinary family. After I put my son to bed, after the stories, the kisses, the dream of angels, I went back to the bedroom. My husband was already lying down, fiddling with his phone, always on the phone. I entered slowly. I closed the door. I locked it. He looked at me with a questioning expression. "Do you want to tell me something?" I asked. My voice was strangely calm, firm, without trembling. It was the voice of someone who had already cried all the tears in secret and was now just tired of the lie. He put down the phone. "Tell you what, anything. Anything you think I should know." I saw his brain working, calculating, trying to figure out how much I knew. His eyes diverted from mine, first to the side, then to the floor, then back to me, but never really facing me. "I don't know what you're talking about," he finally said. The lie came so easily from his lips. Years of practice, I imagine. "You don't know." I took a step toward him, then another. "Are you sure? There's nothing you want to tell me about?" "I don't know." "The nights when I'm traveling?" Something passed across his face. Fear, guilt, or just anger at being discovered. "You're imagining things again," he said, and there was a subtle aggressiveness in his voice. "You always get paranoid when you're stressed with work. We've talked about this. As if my pain was just a result of stress, as if my intuition was just neurosis, as if I were the problem. And that's when I realized, love, when it dies, doesn't make noise. It just slowly erases the colors. It drains the life from each memory until all that remains are faded photographs of something that was once beautiful. I grabbed my phone from the bedside table. I unlocked the screen. I opened the app. I selected the video. "Am I imagining?" I asked, turning the screen toward him. I'll never forget the expression on his face when he saw it. First it was denial, wide eyes, mouth half open, as if he couldn't believe what he was seeing. Then came panic, accelerated breathing, hands closing into fists, and finally, rage. That rage of a man caught in a lie, that rage that tries to blame everyone but himself. "You filmed me?" he shouted. getting up from the bed. You invaded my privacy? Your privacy? I laughed. It was a bitter laugh without humor. In my house? In my bed? With the woman I pay to take care of our son? This isn't what it looks like. Don't insult me. My voice cut through the air like a blade. Don't try to explain. Don't try to justify. I saw, I heard, I know. He took a step toward me. Let me explain. Explain what? I took a step back, maintaining distance. Explain that you cheated on me? Explain that you lied looking in my eyes? Explain that you used our son as an alibi? What exactly do you want to explain? It was a mistake. A mistake? Another bitter laugh. A mistake is when you forget to buy milk at the store. A mistake is when you arrive late at work. This, I pointed at the video still playing on the screen. This is a choice. It's a series of choices. Every day. Every time you looked at me and lied. He tried to say something, but I interrupted him. You know what hurts most? It's not the betrayal. It's realizing you underestimated me. That you thought I was too stupid, too trusting, too blind to notice. That you played with my love as if it were something disposable. That night, I didn't argue. I didn't scream. I didn't cry in front of him. I just left the phone on the bedside table, with the video still open, a poisoned gift that couldn't be ignored. I left the room before he could say any other lie disguised as an explanation. I went to the balcony. The winter wind was cutting. It hurt on the skin like 1,000 little ice needles. Soul shone below me, a tapestry of yellow and white lights stretching as far as the eye could see. Millions of lit windows, each one holding a story, maybe hundreds like mine. How many women at that moment were discovering betrayals? How many were sitting alone on cold balconies, trying to decide whether to destroy everything or continue pretending? How many were crying silently so as not to wake their children? The Han River snaked through the city like a shiny black snake. From above, it looked peaceful, but I knew dangerous currents hid beneath the calm surface, just like my marriage. And it was there, watching souls sleep under the winter sky, that I understood. Sometimes what destroys us isn't the betrayal. It's the time we spend pretending we don't see. It's each day we choose illusion instead of truth. It's each time we swallow our pain to keep the peace. I had spent years swallowing, years pretending, years accepting crumbs of affection and calling that love. But that night, on the cold balcony with the wind cutting my face, I decided it was over. No more lies. No more excuses. No more pretending. And you know what happens when a woman finally stops pretending? When she finally looks at the truth without blinking? She is reborn. Not immediately, not without pain, but she is reborn. The following days were a blur of practical decisions and emotional exhaustion. I called a family law attorney, a woman recommended by a colleague who had been through something similar. Her office was in Gangnam, in one of those modern buildings with glass walls and minimalist decoration. How long has this been going on? She asked, taking notes in a leather notebook. I don't know, I admitted. I only found out 3 days ago, but I think it's been months, maybe years. She nodded, her expression professional but not without compassion. Do you have evidence? I showed her the videos. She watched in silence, her face impassive, though I saw her jaw tighten slightly. This is solid, she said. In Korea, adultery laws have changed, but this will help significantly in custody and asset division proceedings. Do you want to proceed with the process? Did I want to proceed? Part of me still wanted to believe this was all a nightmare, that I would wake up and everything would be back to normal. But what was normal? A marriage based on lies? A life built on a foundation of sand? Yes, I said. I want to proceed. The process was slower than I expected. Paperwork, meetings, mediation sessions. My husband tried everything. Apologies, promises, tears. He said it had been a moment of weakness, that it meant nothing, that he loved me and our family. But the problem with broken trust is that once it shatters, you can glue the pieces back together, but the cracks will always be visible. And every time you look at them, you'll remember how they got there. I moved out of the apartment in Mapodong. I found a smaller place near the Han River, a studio with large windows that let in morning light. It wasn't much. A living room that doubled as a bedroom, a tiny kitchen, a bathroom so small you could barely turn around. But it was mine, truly mine. My son took it better than I expected. Children are resilient in ways we adults forget. He asked why we lived alone now, why Daddy didn't come home anymore. Sometimes, I told him, kneeling to be at his eye level, adults realize they're happier living separately. It doesn't mean we don't love you. It just means mommy and daddy are better friends when they're not living together. It was a simplified version of the truth, but it was what he could understand at 7 years old. The full truth would come later, when he was old enough to process it. I started recording videos about real life, about love, forgiveness, new beginnings. I talked about emotional well-being, about recognizing unhealthy relationship patterns, about the importance of self-worth. I didn't share all the details of my story. That was too personal, too raw, but I shared the lessons I was learning. The first video got 12 views, the second got 23. By the 10th video, I had 500 subscribers. And then something unexpected happened. People started sharing their own stories in the comments. I went through this too. Thank you for making me feel less alone. Your words gave me the courage to leave. I'm rebuilding my life, just like you. It's hard, but it's worth it. Each comment was a tiny piece of healing, not just for them, but for me too. There's something profoundly therapeutic about transforming your pain into something that helps others. It doesn't erase what happened, but it gives it meaning. 6 months after the separation, I was walking along the Han River on a Saturday afternoon. The weather was perfect, that sweet spot between spring and summer when the air is warm but not hot, when cherry blossoms have already fallen, but their memory still lingers in the breeze. The path along the river was crowded with people, families on bicycles, couples holding hands, elderly people doing Tai Chi under the trees, life in all its messy, beautiful complexity. I stopped at a bench and sat down, watching the river flow. The water reflected the blue sky, and boats glided lazily across the surface. A child nearby laughed as his father chased him, and the sound made me smile. My phone buzzed with another comment notification. I opened it, curious. Your story saved my life. I was so close to giving up, thinking I wasn't worth anything, that I deserved to be treated poorly. But watching your videos made me realize I deserve better. Thank you for existing. I stared at those words for a long moment. Thank you for existing. Such simple words, but they carried the weight of everything I had been through. All the pain, all the tears, all the sleepless nights, all the moments of doubt. They had led to this, to being able to help someone else find their way out of darkness. I typed a response with trembling fingers. You've always been worth everything. Sometimes we just need someone to remind us. I'm so proud of you for choosing yourself. That takes incredible courage. As I hit send, I realized something profound. I wasn't just typing those words to a stranger on the internet. I was also speaking to my past self, the woman sitting on the cold kitchen floor 2 years ago, the woman who watched that devastating video in a hotel room, the woman who thought her world was ending. If I could go back and tell her anything, it would be this. You're going to survive this. More than survive. You're going to thrive. You're going to discover strength you never knew you had. You're going to learn that the love you were desperately trying to save wasn't real love at all. Real love doesn't make you feel small. It doesn't make you question your worth. It doesn't ask you to pretend and ignore and swallow your pain. But I couldn't go back. None of us can. We can only move forward, carrying the lessons, leaving behind the weight. I finished my latte and stepped back out into the Seoul morning. The sun was bright, the air was fresh, and somewhere in the distance, I could hear street musicians playing a hopeful melody. The city felt different now, not because it had changed, but because I had. 3 years after the separation, I took my son on a trip to Jeju Island. It was just the two of us, spending a week exploring beaches, hiking trails, eating fresh seafood at local restaurants. He was 10 now, growing so fast it sometimes made my heart ache. We were sitting on the beach one evening, watching the sunset, paint the sky in shades of orange and pink and purple. The waves rolled in gently, and the sand was still warm from the day's sun. "Mom," he said, building a small castle with wet sand. "Do you think you'll ever get married again?" The question surprised me. We didn't talk much about my romantic life, mostly because there wasn't much to talk about. I had been on a few dates over the past year. Nothing serious. I wasn't actively looking for anyone. I was content with where I was. "Maybe someday," I said honestly. "If I meet someone who adds to my life instead of taking from it, someone who makes me better, not smaller. But I'm happy now. Just us. Are you happy?" He nodded, patting his sandcastle with serious concentration. "Yeah, I like our life. It's simple but good. Simple but good. What a beautiful way to describe it. You know what the most important thing I learned is?" I asked him. He looked up at me, his eyes curious. "What?" That being alone is better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. That peace is more valuable than any relationship that costs you your self-respect. And that loving yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. He thought about this, his young mind processing concepts that some adults never fully grasp. Did Daddy make you feel alone? I chose my words carefully. I never wanted to poison his relationship with his father, but I also wanted to be honest. Sometimes, yes, but that taught me what I don't want, which helped me understand what I do want. And it taught me that I'm strong enough to choose happiness over comfort. He nodded slowly, then went back to his sandcastle. A few minutes later, without looking up, he said, "I think you're the bravest person I know." Tears sprang to my eyes immediately. I wrapped my arm around his shoulders and pulled him close. "Thank you, baby. That means more to me than you could ever know." We sat there until the sun fully set, until the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, until the temperature dropped and we had to head back to our hotel. As we walked along the beach, hand in hand, I felt overwhelmingly grateful, not for what I had been through, but for who I had become because of it. The channel continued to evolve. I started interviewing other people who had overcome difficult situations, not just relationship issues, but career setbacks, health challenges, family estrangements, personal losses. Each story was a testament to human resilience, to our incredible capacity to heal and grow and start again. I also started speaking at events. Small gatherings at first. Community centers, women's groups, university seminars. Then larger venues, conferences, corporate events, even a TEDx talk about rebuilding self-worth after betrayal. Standing on that TEDx stage, looking out at hundreds of faces, I felt the weight of my journey in a new way, not as burden, but as purpose. Every painful step had led me here, to this moment, where I could use my experience to illuminate the path for others. We live in a society that tells us we need to be chosen by someone else to have value, I said into the microphone, my voice steady and clear. We need to be someone's partner, someone's spouse, someone's other half. But what if I told you that you're already whole? What if I told you that being chosen by yourself is the most important choice of all? The audience was silent, hanging on every word. When I discovered my husband's affair, I thought my life was over. I thought I had failed. Failed as a wife, failed as a woman, failed at the one thing society tells us we're supposed to succeed at, keeping a man happy. But I hadn't failed. The relationship had failed, and that failure freed me to discover something extraordinary. I didn't need anyone to complete me because I was never incomplete to begin with. The applause was thunderous, but more than the applause, it was the faces I saw afterward. People with tears in their eyes, people who thanked me for giving voice to their own experiences, people who said they finally felt permission to choose themselves. 4 years after the separation, I ran into my ex-husband at a school event for our son. It was the first time we'd been in the same space in months. Our custody arrangement was smooth. He had our son every other weekend and one evening during the week, but we usually did pickups and drop-offs without much interaction. He looked different, older, more tired. The confidence he used to carry seemed dimmed somehow. "You look good," he said, his voice tentative. "Happy." "I am," I replied simply. There was no anger in my voice, no bitterness, just truth. He started, then stopped, searching for words. "I made a lot of mistakes. I hurt you in ways I can never take back. I just wanted you to know that I'm sorry, truly sorry." I looked at him, really looked at him, and felt nothing but mild sympathy. This man who once had the power to destroy me now seemed small, insignificant in the larger scope of my life. "I appreciate you saying that," I said. "I hope you've learned from those mistakes, not for me, but for yourself and for our son." He nodded, looking relieved that I hadn't unleashed anger or pain on him. Maybe he expected that. Maybe he thought I was still that woman on the kitchen floor, broken and bleeding. But I wasn't. I was someone entirely new, someone stronger, wiser, more grounded in her own worth. "How are things with you?" I asked, not because I cared romantically, but because we were connected through our son, and I wanted things to be civil. "They're okay. I'm working on myself. Therapy, mostly. Trying to understand why I made the choices I made." "That's good," I said genuinely. "We all need to do that work." Our son came running up then, excited to show us both a drawing he had made. We stood there together, not as a family in the traditional sense, but as two people committed to raising a child with love and stability. It wasn't what I had originally envisioned, but it was healthy and honest, and that made it beautiful in its own way. After the event, driving home with my son chattering in the back seat about his friends and his projects. I felt a completeness I had never experienced during my marriage. This life, this simple, honest, peaceful life, was everything I needed. 5 years after the separation, I did something I never thought I would do. I started dating someone seriously. His name was James, an English teacher at an international school. We met at a bookstore. Such a cliché, but sometimes clichés exist because they work. I was browsing the self-help section, ironically, and he made a joke about how he was looking for a book titled How to Not Be Awkward at Bookstores. I laughed, and we started talking. 3 hours later, we were still standing there, having moved from books to life, to dreams, to fears. He had been through his own difficult past, a painful separation, struggles with self-worth, the hard work of rebuilding. What I loved most about James was that he didn't try to fix me or save me or complete me. He simply enjoyed my company, and I enjoyed his. We were two whole people choosing to spend time together, not two broken halves trying to make a whole. Our relationship moved slowly, deliberately. I introduced him to my son after 6 months, and they got along wonderfully. James never tried to be a father figure. He respected that my son had a father. Instead, he was just James, a kind and funny presence in our lives. One evening, about a year into our relationship, we were cooking dinner together in my kitchen. Music played softly in the background, and my son was doing homework at the table. "You know what I love about this?" James said, stirring the pasta sauce. "What? How normal it is. How easy. How we don't have to try so hard to make it work because it just does." He was right. Being with James didn't require pretending or hiding or swallowing my feelings. When something bothered me, I said so. When I needed space, I took it. When I wanted closeness, I asked for it. And he did the same. We had built something based on honesty and respect and genuine affection. "I never thought I'd have this," I admitted. After everything that happened, I thought maybe healthy love wasn't meant for me, that maybe I was broken in some way that made me unlovable. James put down the spoon and turned to face me fully. "You were never broken. You were with someone who couldn't see your value. That's not the same thing." Simple words, but they healed something deep inside me that I didn't even realize still needed healing. 6 years after the separation, I published a book. It was a compilation of essays about rebuilding after betrayal, finding self-worth, understanding healthy relationships, and learning to trust again. I included my story, but also stories from dozens of people who had shared their experiences with me over the years. The book launch was held at a small bookstore in Seoul. I wasn't expecting many people, maybe a few subscribers from my channel, maybe some friends, but the room was packed, standing room only. People had come from all over Korea, and some had even flown in from other countries. As I stood at the podium, looking out at all those faces, I felt overwhelmed with emotion. Each person in that room represented a story, a struggle, a journey toward healing, and somehow, my words had meant something to them. "This book isn't just my story," I began, my voice thick with emotion. "It's our story. Every person who has ever felt not good enough. Every person who has ever been betrayed or dismissed or taken for granted. Every person who has ever had to choose between their dignity and their comfort. This is for all of us." I read several passages from the book, and by the end, there wasn't a dry eye in the room, including mine. During the signing afterward, a young woman approached me. She couldn't have been more than 25, but her eyes held the kind of pain that ages you. "I'm living your story right now," she whispered, tears streaming down her face. "I found out 3 months ago. I keep thinking it will get easier, but it just hurts so much." I took her hand in both of mine. "It will get easier. Not today, maybe not tomorrow, but gradually. One day you'll realize you went a whole hour without thinking about it, then a whole day, then a whole week, and eventually it becomes just a part of your story, not the whole story." "How did you forgive him?" she asked. I thought about this carefully. I didn't forgive him for his sake. I forgave him for mine, because carrying that anger and hurt was exhausting. Forgiveness doesn't mean what he did was okay. It means I'm no longer letting what he did control my life. It means I'm free. She nodded, wiping her tears. "Thank you for being brave enough to share, for showing us it's possible to survive this. Not just survive," I corrected gently. "Thrive. You're going to thrive." 7 years after the separation, I moved into a bigger apartment. My son was 13 now, needing more space, and I could finally afford something nicer. The new place had a view of the Han River, large windows that let in abundant natural light, and enough room for both of us to have our own spaces. The first night in the new apartment, after all the boxes were unpacked and the furniture was arranged, I stood on the balcony looking out at the city, soul stretched out before me, endless and beautiful, full of possibility. I thought about that woman from 7 years ago, the one sitting on the cold kitchen floor, the one watching that devastating video, the one who thought her life was over. If she could see me now, standing here, what would she think? I hope she would be proud. Proud that she found the courage to face the truth. Proud that she chose herself even when it was terrifying. Proud that she turned her pain into purpose. My phone rang. It was James. "Hey," he said warmly. "How's the new place?" "Perfect," I said, meaning it completely. "Absolutely perfect. I'm proud of you, you know. Everything you've built, everything you've become. I'm proud of me too," I said. And for the first time in my life, I truly meant it without any qualification or doubt. 8 years after the separation, on a crisp autumn morning, I was invited to speak at a women's empowerment conference in New York. It was my first international speaking engagement, and I was nervous, but excited. The theme of the conference was choosing yourself, and I was the keynote speaker. As I stood backstage, listening to the MC introduce me, I felt the full weight of my journey. Every painful moment, every tear, every night of doubt, all of it had led to this. I walked onto that stage with confidence I never could have faked. It was real, earned through years of hard work and self-discovery. "Good morning," I began, my voice carrying across the auditorium. "My name is Sarah, and 8 years ago I discovered my husband was having an affair. That discovery destroyed me, but it also saved me, because in losing everything I thought I needed, I discovered everything I actually am. For the next hour, I shared my story, the betrayal, the pain, the decision to choose myself, the long road of healing, the eventual peace, and finally, the purpose I found in helping others. I talked about self-worth, about boundaries, about the difference between healthy and toxic love, but mostly, I talked about the power of choice, the choice to face truth instead of hiding from it, the choice to value yourself even when others don't, the choice to start over even when starting over is terrifying. The standing ovation lasted several minutes. Afterward, hundreds of women lined up to speak with me, to share their stories, to thank me for my words. Each conversation was a reminder of why I did this work, why I continued to share my story even when it was vulnerable and exposing. One woman, probably in her 50s, with silver streaks in her hair and wisdom in her eyes, took my hand and said, "I've been married for 30 years to a man who makes me feel invisible. I keep thinking I'm too old to start over, that I've invested too much time to walk away now. But listening to you made me realize I'm not too old. I'm not too invested. I'm just scared, and being scared isn't a good enough reason to stay miserable." "No," I agreed softly. "It's not. You deserve to feel seen and valued and loved, and if your current situation isn't providing that, you have permission to choose something different. It's never too late." She left with tears in her eyes, but also with something else, hope. And sometimes, hope is the first step toward transformation. 9 years after the separation, something unexpected happened. My ex-husband reached out asking if we could talk, not about logistics or our son, but about us, about what happened. We met at a quiet cafe near the Han River, a neutral space where we could talk without the weight of our shared history pressing down on us. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, looking older than I remembered, not just physically, but emotionally. He carried a weariness that spoke of hard lessons learned. "Of course," I replied. "What did you want to talk about?" He took a deep breath. "I've been in therapy for years now, working through why I made the choices I made, and I've come to understand that what I did to you, the lying, the betrayal, the disrespect, came from my own brokenness, not from any lack in you." I nodded, listening. "You were an amazing wife. You were kind, supportive, loving, everything anyone could want. And I threw that away because I was broken inside and didn't know how to handle my own issues. I blamed you for things that had nothing to do with you. I made you question yourself when the problem was always me. I appreciate you saying that," I said genuinely. "It must have taken a lot of work to get to that understanding." "It did, and I know this doesn't change anything. I know I can't undo the hurt I caused. But I needed you to know that you were never the problem. You were never not enough. I was the one who was lacking, and I'm sorry it took me so long to see that. We talked for another hour, not about rekindling anything, but about understanding, about closure, about moving forward as co-parents with respect and clarity. When we finally said goodbye, I felt a final piece of the past click into place. That evening, I wrote in my journal, "Today, I received the apology I needed years ago, but the beautiful thing is, I no longer needed it to heal. I had already healed. The apology was nice, but my peace didn't depend on it." That's how I know I've truly moved on. 10 years after the separation, I celebrated with a party. Not a celebration of my divorce. That would be weird. But a celebration of a decade of growth, of choosing myself, of building a life I was proud of. Friends from all stages of my journey came. Old friends who had supported me through the darkest days. New friends I had met through my work. Subscribers from my channel who had become dear to me. Colleagues, fellow survivors. And of course, James and my son. My son, now 15 and showing early signs of the man he would become, stood up to give a toast. My mom taught me that love isn't about staying in situations that hurt you. It's about having the courage to choose better. She taught me that families can look different and still be full of love. She taught me that mistakes don't define us. How we respond to them does. Mom, you're my hero. Not because you're perfect, but because you're real. I couldn't hold back the tears. This boy, no, this young man, understood things that many adults never grasp. And he had learned them by watching me navigate the hardest period of my life with as much grace and honesty as I could manage. Later that night, after everyone had gone home and it was just me cleaning up the remnants of the party, I sat down with a cup of tea and reflected on the decade that had passed. 10 years ago, I was broken, scared, and uncertain. I thought my life was over. I thought I would never be happy again. I thought the pain would swallow me whole. But here I was, 10 years later, surrounded by love, real love, healthy love, honest love. I had built a career helping others heal. I had raised a kind, thoughtful son. I had found peace within myself. I had learned that I was enough, exactly as I was. The journey hadn't been easy. There were setbacks, dark moments, times when I wanted to give up, but I kept going, one day at a time, one choice at a time, one breath at a time. And gradually, the pain transformed into wisdom. The betrayal transformed into boundaries. The loss transformed into growth. I picked up my phone and opened my channel. Over 1 million subscribers now. Thousands of comments from people whose lives had been touched by my story. I recorded a short video, speaking directly to the camera with the authenticity that had become my trademark. 10 years ago today, my life changed forever. I discovered a betrayal that shattered everything I thought I knew about love and trust. And if you had told me then that this betrayal would eventually become the greatest gift of my life, I would have thought you were crazy. I paused, choosing my words carefully. But it was a gift. Not because betrayal is ever okay. It's not. Not because pain builds character. That's a harmful myth. But because it forced me to make a choice. Stay in a situation that was slowly destroying me. Or choose myself. I smiled into the camera. I chose myself. And in that choosing, I discovered that I was stronger than I ever imagined. I discovered that peace is worth more than any relationship built on lies. I discovered that being alone is infinitely better than being with someone who makes you feel alone. I leaned closer to the camera, as if sharing a secret with a friend. If you're watching this, and you're in pain right now, if you're trying to decide whether to stay or go, if you're wondering if you'll ever feel whole again, I want you to know something. You will heal. You will find peace. You will discover strength you didn't know you had. But first, you have to choose yourself. You have to decide that your well-being matters more than maintaining an illusion. You have to believe that you deserve better. I took a breath. And you do. You deserve love that feels safe. You deserve relationships built on honesty and respect. You deserve to wake up without that knot of anxiety in your stomach. You deserve peace. I ended the video with my signature closing. Choose yourself, friends. Always choose yourself. And within hours, the video had thousands of views and hundreds of comments. But one comment stood out to me. It said simply, "I needed this today. Thank you for reminding me that my story isn't over yet. It's just beginning." I smiled, typing a response. "Your story is just beginning, and it's going to be beautiful. I promise." In Korea, I learned that even the coldest winter holds a spring within it. The harsh winds eventually give way to cherry blossoms. The frozen ground eventually softens and blooms. Nothing stays winter forever. and my spring had finally come. It didn't arrive all at once with fanfare and celebration. It came gradually, quietly, in small moments of joy and peace. It came in morning coffees enjoyed slowly. It came in laughter with my son. It came in honest conversations with James. It came in messages from people whose lives I had touched. It came in the quiet confidence of knowing I was exactly where I needed to be. That night, standing on my balcony overlooking the Han River, I thought about the woman I had been a decade ago. The woman who sat on a cold kitchen floor wondering if she would survive. The woman who watched that video with a breaking heart. The woman who pretended not to see the truth because seeing it was too terrifying. If I could speak to her now, I would tell her, "You are so much stronger than you know. The pain you're feeling right now won't last forever. The betrayal that's destroying you will eventually teach you about your own worth. The loss you're experiencing will eventually make room for something better. Hold on. Choose yourself. Trust the process. Your best life is waiting on the other side of this pain." But I can't speak to her. She's gone, transformed into who I am now. And that transformation, as painful as it was worth every tear. I don't regret my past. Not the marriage, not the betrayal, not even the pain. Because all of it led me here, to this moment, to this life, to this peace. And this peace is everything. If this story touched you, if you saw yourself in any part of it, I want you to know something. You're not alone. Whatever you're going through, whatever betrayal you've experienced, whatever pain you're carrying, you're not alone. And more importantly, you're stronger than you think. The greatest act of self-love is choosing to walk away from situations that require you to constantly prove your worth. The greatest act of courage is looking at a comfortable lie and choosing the uncomfortable truth. The greatest act of wisdom is understanding that you can love someone and still know they're not good for you. And the greatest act of faith is believing that on the other side of this pain, there's a version of you waiting, stronger, wiser, more at peace than you ever thought possible. That version is already there. You just have to choose to become her. Choose yourself, my friend. Always, always choose yourself. Because you are enough. You have always been enough. And you will always be enough. That's not something someone else gets to decide. That's a truth you get to claim for yourself. And once you claim it, once you truly believe it, everything changes. The silence that once screamed with pain becomes a silence that whispers peace. And that, my dear friend, is what freedom feels like. The end. If this story resonated with you, write it in the comments below. Sometimes sharing our pain is the first step toward healing. And remember, your story isn't over yet. The best chapters are still unwritten, waiting for you to have the courage to turn the page. Ed with a notification. Another comment on my latest video. I opened it. I just want to say thank you. I've been following your channel for 3 months now, and your words helped me realize I deserve better. I filed for separation last week. I'm scared, but I'm also hopeful. You showed me that it's possible to start over. Thank you for being brave enough to share your journey. I read it twice, then a third time. Tears blurred my vision, but they weren't sad tears. They were tears of gratitude, of connection, of understanding that pain shared becomes lighter. I typed a response. You're braver than you think. The hardest part is making the decision. You've already done that. Now comes the healing. And yes, it's scary, but it's also liberating. You've got this. We've all got this. I put the phone away and looked back at the river. The wind no longer hurt. The sound of the city no longer felt overwhelming. For the first time in years, I felt peaceful. Not happy in that explosive, euphoric way, but peaceful, content, at ease with myself and my choices. The truth is, there's no manual for starting over. No step-by-step guide that tells you exactly what to do when your life falls apart. You just have to wake up each day and choose to keep going. Choose to believe that tomorrow might be a little easier than today. Choose to trust that eventually, the weight you're carrying will get lighter. I discovered my path when I stopped looking for someone to blame and started looking inward. When I stopped asking, why did this happen to me? And started asking, what can I learn from this? How can I grow? Who do I want to become? One evening, about 8 months after the separation, my son and I were making dinner together. He stood on a stool by the counter, carefully stirring a pot of soup. His tongue stuck out slightly in concentration, the way it always did when he was focused on something important. Mom, he said suddenly, are you sad that Daddy doesn't live with us? I paused, considering my answer carefully. Sometimes, I admitted. I'm sad that things didn't work out the way I hoped, but I'm not sad about where we are now. Are you? He thought about it, still stirring the soup. Sometimes I miss him, but I like it here. It's cozy, and you smile more now. His words hit me like a gentle wave. I hadn't realized he had noticed. Children see so much more than we think they do. Do I? I asked, smiling at him. Yeah. Before, you smiled with your mouth but not your eyes. Now you smile with both. I pulled him into a hug, careful not to knock over the soup. Thank you for telling me that, sweetheart. That means everything to me. Later that night, after putting him to bed, I sat by the window of our small apartment. The city lights twinkled in the distance, and I could see the Han River reflecting the moon. I thought about everything that had happened, the betrayal, the pain, the anger, the fear, but I also thought about everything I had gained: strength, independence, self-respect, peace. I don't hate him. Not anymore. Hatred requires too much energy, and I'd rather spend that energy building my new life. He made choices that hurt me deeply, choices that shattered our family. But in a strange way, those choices freed me from a life that was slowly suffocating me. I don't hate her either. The woman who slept in my bed, wore my bathrobe, invaded my life. She's young, and probably didn't fully understand the damage she was causing. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Either way, her choices are hers to live with. They both showed me that I had built my life on ground that wasn't mine. I had constructed an entire identity around being his wife, around maintaining our marriage, around keeping up appearances. When that foundation crumbled, I had to rebuild from scratch. And in that rebuilding, I discovered who I actually was beneath all those roles and expectations. I started therapy around this time, a therapist specializing in relationship recovery and self-esteem. Her office smelled like lavender, and she had a way of asking questions that made you think deeply about your answers. "What do you want?" she asked during one of our early sessions. It seemed like such a simple question, but I found myself speechless. What did I want? I had spent so many years thinking about what everyone else wanted, what my husband wanted, what my son needed, what my family expected, what society demanded, that I had completely lost touch with my own desires. "I don't know," I admitted. "That's okay," she said gently. "That's what we'll figure out together." Over the following months, I slowly pieced it together. I wanted peace. I wanted authenticity. I wanted relationships built on honesty and mutual respect. I wanted to raise my son in an environment where love didn't come with conditions or compromises. I wanted to wake up each morning without that heavy feeling in my chest, without that constant anxiety about what lies I might discover today. I wanted to feel enough, just as I was. The channel continued to grow. By the 1-year mark, I had 50,000 subscribers. By 18 months, 200,000. People connected with the authenticity, with the realness, with the vulnerability. In a world full of carefully curated perfection, there was something refreshing about someone saying, "This is messy, this hurts, but we're going to get through it together." I started getting messages from people all over the world, women and men dealing with betrayal, emotional neglect, toxic relationships, loss of self. Each story was different, but the underlying pain was the same. The pain of not feeling valued, of being taken for granted, of losing yourself trying to please someone else. And with each message, I felt more certain of my purpose. My pain wasn't meaningless. It had transformed into something that could help others. Not because I had all the answers, I definitely didn't, but because I was willing to be honest about the journey. 2 years after the separation, the process was finalized. I was officially no longer married. I received the papers in the mail on a Tuesday morning. I expected to feel something dramatic. Relief, sadness, vindication. But instead, I just felt complete. This chapter was closed. A new one was beginning. I went to a nearby cafe that morning, ordered my favorite caramel latte, and sat by the window watching people pass by. Each person rushing somewhere, carrying their own stories, their own struggles, their own triumphs. An elderly couple walked by holding hands, moving slowly, clearly comfortable in their long years together. A young woman rushed past talking animatedly on the phone, laughing at something. A businessman looked stressed, checking his watch repeatedly. A mother pushed a stroller, her face tired but content. All these people, living their lives, making their choices, building their stories. And me, sitting in this cafe, sipping my latte, finally at peace with mine. My phone buzz.